This is the story of British television's greatest rivalry, a 23-year feud that gripped 20 million viewers and left even the actor's closest colleagues questioning where the performance ended and reality began. Johnny Briggs's death in February 2021 sparked renewed interest in what truly happened between Ken Barlow and Mike Baldwin.
It could be a decision that you would regret for the rest of your life, mate.
There's a great many things I'll regret for the rest of my life, mate.
And William Roach's tribute revealed something far more complex than anyone expected. The Ken Barlow and Mike Baldwin feud wasn't just a case of television, but a cultural phenomenon that stopped the nation in its tracks, emptied pubs on broadcast nights, and made it onto the Old Trafford scoreboard during a Manchester United match. But the real story, the one that's only now coming to light, involves two actors whose relationship remained so mysterious that their fellow cast members admitted they never quite knew what was genuine and what was performance. Back in 1982, producer Mervyn Watson pitched what seemed like a mad idea at a story conference.
And you are the most treacherous, evil...
Mike!
You little man!
Stop it! Stop it!
Bank it in, the pair of you!
Come on!
Deirdre Barlow, the nation's sweetheart, would have an affair with Mike Baldwin, the swaggering factory owner who'd arrived on the cobbles 6 years earlier. Watson later recalled the heated response, saying there were categorical and opposite viewpoints expressed. Some thought it brilliant, others thought it would destroy the show, and nobody imagined it would become the most talked-about storyline in British soap history. February '83 brought 20 million people to their tellies when Ken discovered Deirdre's betrayal. 20 million viewers represents nearly half the adult population of Britain, all watching a devastated Ken Barlow confront his wife about her affair with his sworn enemy. The storyline captured something deeper than typical soap drama, tapping into real tensions, real class divisions, and real anxieties about the changing face of Britain in the Thatcher years.
You're really enjoying this, aren't you?
Hey, as a matter of fact, I am.
Hey,
Bastard! Not this one!
Johnny Briggs remembered the madness that followed, recalling how the way it captured the nation was amazing, and everyone was talking about it. Men were shouting out for Mike to go on and give her one, and people were disappointed when she went back to Ken. The affair dominated conversations in offices, factories, and corner shops across the country, with women debating whether Deirdre should choose steady Ken or exciting Mike, while blokes argued about which man had it right. The climactic episode saw Mike arrive at the Barlow doorstep, ready to whisk Deirdre away to a new life, but Ken slammed the door in his face and Deirdre chose her husband. And here's where it gets properly British.
We've done it. We pulled it off, darling. My God, we've done it! Oh!
The reconciliation was announced on the electronic scoreboard at Old Trafford during a Manchester United versus Arsenal match, with the message reading, Ken and Deirdre reunited, Ken 1, Mike 0. The crowd erupted in cheers over a soap opera resolution, which shows how deeply this storyline had embedded itself in the national consciousness. Recognition came quickly for all three actors when they were named TV Personalities of the Year at the Pie Colour Television Awards in '83. Roach, Briggs, and Anne Kirkbride had achieved something remarkable by making a love triangle matter to millions. But what began with Deirdre was just the opening salvo in what would become a 30-year chess match of provocations, punches, and personal vendettas.
You're finished, Barlow. Deirdre loves me. She's mine.
Mike's marriage to Ken's daughter Susan in '86 triggered one of their most celebrated confrontations, and Briggs recalled the scene with evident relish, calling it a classic, with Baldwin getting it in his own territory at the factory. Ken didn't anger easily, but after the way Mike had treated his daughter, he was furious. And here's where things get interesting. William Roach wasn't satisfied with how Ken was being written in that storyline because Ken was too passive and too willing to take Mike's abuse without fighting back. Roach approached director Brian Mills and demanded that Ken be allowed to physically confront Mike, and though the setup didn't allow for the fight Roach wanted, Ken was instead permitted to slam Deirdre against the door during the discovery scene. Anne Kirkbride actually burst into tears because of what was described as the ferocity of Roach's performance. That moment reveals something about William Roach that most people never saw. This wasn't just an actor reading lines. He was protective of Ken Barlow, defensive about how the character was portrayed, and willing to push back when he felt the writing didn't serve the truth of the rivalry. That intensity bled into every scene he shared with Johnny Briggs. The two actors became specialists in soap violence without choreographers, and Briggs noted they became old hands at doing on-screen fistfights, and both really enjoyed doing the stunts. One '98 confrontation left Briggs injured after falling backwards, and they threw real punches, took real hits, and created fight scenes that felt genuinely dangerous because in a way, they were. Their battles reflected a deeper cultural clash that ITV deliberately cultivated between characters who represented opposing visions of Britain. Ken stood for the lefty do-gooder, an intellectual working-class socialist who believed in unions, education, and social responsibility, while Mike embodied the Thatcherite entrepreneur, the cut-and-thrust money grabber who believed in profit, ambition, and looking after number one. Every confrontation between them wasn't just personal, but political, playing out the battle for Britain's soul on Coronation Street. The storylines kept coming year after year. Susan revealed her fake abortion in '87, when she'd secretly had Mike's son Adam. The Free Deirdre campaign forced Ken and Mike to cooperate despite their hatred in '98, and the Freshco siege in 2000 bound them together at gunpoint, forcing them to acknowledge they'd been behaving like children. Susan's death in a car crash in 2001, while fleeing Mike's custody, demands triggered another bitter battle over who had the right to grieve. Through it all, one question lingered. How much of this was acting? Amanda Barry, who played Alma Baldwin as Mike's most beloved wife, made an intriguing statement in the 2020 documentary Coronation Street Icons, Ken Barlow. She admitted they were natural enemies, those two, and she never knew how much of it was for real. Let that sink in for a moment. Amanda Barry worked intimately with both actors for years, saw them on set every day, watched them prepare for scenes, and observed their interactions between takes. Yet she couldn't tell where the performance ended and reality began. That's either a testament to their acting brilliance or a suggestion that something genuine simmered beneath the surface. Anthony Cotton, who plays Sean Tully, offered another cryptic observation when he said Johnny Briggs was a complex character on and off screen, and everyone adored him. Complex on and off screen. That's a carefully chosen phrase, hinting at layers the public never saw. The official position, maintained by both actors, was friendship and mutual respect. Briggs stated Ken was jealous of Mike because he was rich and successful while Ken was not, which is a description that tellingly mapped the fictional dynamic onto real-world comparisons. Roach claimed Ken disliked Mike because he was a self-centered and self-made individual, but neither actor's explanation quite answered the question their colleagues were asking. What's certain is their contrasting personalities mirrored their characters perfectly. Roach was the spiritually inclined, cerebral presence who approached acting as a craft and Ken Barlow as a responsibility, while Briggs was the boisterous, larger-than-life entertainer who once told stories of drinking with Richard Burton, Roger Moore, and Peter O'Toole. One was private and contained, while the other was gregarious and attention-seeking. And the chemistry was electric because they were genuinely different people who brought genuine tension to every scene. As the years rolled on, the rivalry became part of Coronation Street's DNA. Fans tuned in not just for the current storyline, but for the promise that eventually, inevitably, Ken and Mike would clash again, and producer Mayor Tracy understood this perfectly. She put it this way: the fact that Mike dies in Ken's arms says it all, because for most of Mike's life, it was his battles with Ken that kept him going, like two cowboys who spent their lives sizing each other up. Two cowboys. That's the perfect metaphor for what they became: the intellectual and the entrepreneur, the teacher and the businessman, the man who valued principles and the man who valued profit, circling each other for decades with neither able to land the killing blow and neither willing to walk away. Which brings us to the 7th of April 2006 and Mike Baldwin's final appearance on Coronation Street. By this point, Mike had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and the once sharp businessman was losing his grip on reality, confusing past and present, forgetting who he was and what he'd done. Johnny Briggs played the decline with heartbreaking authenticity, showing a proud man stripped of everything that made him formidable. In his final episode, Mike escaped from hospital and wandered back to his beloved factory, and Ken found him confused and frightened. And that's when, in his last moments, Mike's mind slipped back to '83, believing he was young again, believing Deirdre still loved him, believing he'd won. His last words to his lifelong rival came out as, "You're finished, Barlow. Deirdre loves me. She's mine." Mike collapsed from a heart attack and died in Ken's arms while 12.34 million viewers watched, the second highest rated episode of 2006. The theme tune was withheld from the credits out of respect, and the Radio Times promoted the death with photographs recreating Arthur Devis's 1807 painting of Horatio Nelson's death, with Ken positioned as Captain Hardy holding his fallen enemy. By any measure, it was one of British television's most iconic moments, the ultimate ending to the ultimate rivalry. Except William Roach wasn't satisfied with it. In a 2020 Digital Spy interview, Roach revealed something surprising when he admitted the one he wasn't satisfied with is when Mike Baldwin died in his arms. The scene was shot at night and it was raining, so they waited and waited until it stopped. And then the crew said, "Let's go out and we'll just shoot it." Roach explained his frustration in detail, saying he took Mike in his arms and said what he had to say, and the director said, "Right, that's it. When someone is dying in your arms, you've got to be feeling what's going on." And he just knew it could have been deeper and a bit better within himself, calling it the scene he would like to do again. This revelation is extraordinary when you think about it. The actor behind one of television's most memorable moments felt it didn't reach its potential, wanted to do it again, wanted it to be deeper and more meaningful and more true. And there's something profoundly moving about that. William Roach caring so much about honoring Johnny Briggs's exit that he regretted not making it perfect. What does that tell us about their relationship? A man doesn't express that kind of regret about a scene with someone he merely tolerated, and you don't wish you'd done more, felt more, given more, unless the other person mattered to you. But there's another layer to this story that only emerged years after Mike Baldwin's death. For years, the official narrative held that Briggs chose to leave Coronation Street in 2006 due to exhausting filming schedules and a desire to retire at 70. But according to a 2010 Coronation Street publication, that wasn't quite true. Johnny Briggs was effectively axed to accommodate the Alzheimer's storyline that writer John Fay had pitched at a long-term storyline conference 2 years earlier, and the powers that be decided it was too good to pass up. Reports indicate Briggs wasn't too pleased at being axed from the show, although he accepted the decision in order to take part in the story. So Mike Baldwin's exit, the death that millions wept over, the touching final scene with Ken, wasn't Johnny Briggs's choice at all. Recognition sweetened the departure when Briggs received the British Soap Award for Lifetime Achievement in May 2006, followed by an MBE in the 2007 New Year Honours. But notably, Roach had received his MBE 6 years earlier in 2001. Even in their exits there was comparison, and even in their honours there was competition. Johnny Briggs was born in Battersea on the 5th of September 1935 and trained at Italia Conti Academy alongside Millicent Martin and Anthony Newley before serving in the Royal Tank Regiment and building a substantial film career that included roles in Carry On, Up the Khyber, and 633 Squadron. Mike Baldwin made him a household name, but most people don't know he'd actually appeared in the show before Mike Baldwin existed. On the 1st of May 1974, Briggs played Frank, a lorry driver, in a single episode before returning as Mike Baldwin on the 11th of October 1976 for what would become 2,348 episodes over 30 years. His final acting appearance came on the 21st of December 2012 when he reprised Mike as a ghost for a Tex Santa charity sketch, fulfilling a joke he'd made to writer Darren Little years earlier about returning from beyond the grave. Johnny Briggs died peacefully in his sleep on the 28th of February 2021 at the age of 85 after a long illness, with his family by his side. When William Roach learned of his old rival's death, he issued a statement that balanced professional admiration with genuine affection by saying he was so sorry to hear about Johnny. Mike Baldwin and Ken Barlow were arch enemies for many years, but as an actor, Johnny was impeccable, always good, and Roach said he was so fortunate to have worked with him for so many years. Briggs was a strong character who would be greatly missed, and Roach sent his love to Johnny on his journey. Johnny was impeccable, always good, and I was so fortunate. Those aren't the words of a man mourning a mere colleague. Those are the words of someone who genuinely cared, who recognized that working with Johnny Briggs for 3 decades was a privilege, and who understood that what they'd created together mattered. William Roach himself holds the Guinness World Record for longest-serving television star in a continuous role after appearing in Coronation Street's very first episode on the 9th of December, 1960. Now 93, he stated his intention to continue playing Ken Barlow until he's 100, and he was appointed OBE in the 2022 New Year Honours. Behind the scenes, the actors shared moments of genuine camaraderie that the public rarely saw. Producer Mayor Tracy revealed that Bill Roach once suggested to Johnny Briggs that they should make a version of Brokeback Mountain for the 2 elderly cowboys, a joke that captures the affection beneath their professional rivalry. So, what's the truth about Ken Barlow and Mike Baldwin, and what really happened between William Roach and Johnny Briggs? The answer is, they created something that transcended typical soap opera storytelling and became a cultural touchstone for a generation of British viewers. Ken and Deirdre's wedding drew 24 million viewers in 81. The Affair Discovery pulled in 20 million in 83, and Mike's death brought 12.34 million to their screens in 2006, numbers that represent more than ratings because they represent shared national experiences, moments when Britain stopped and watched together. What made the Ken and Mike rivalry extraordinary wasn't just the writing or the dramatic confrontations, but the chemistry between two actors whose real-life dynamic remained enigmatic even to colleagues who worked alongside them for decades. Amanda Barry's confession that she never knew how much of it was for real hints at a truth more complex than simple friendship or rivalry. Perhaps the real story is that William Roach and Johnny Briggs channeled something genuine into their performances, whether competitive tension or mutual respect or some combination impossible to disentangle. Roach's regret about Mike's death scene reveals an artist who genuinely cared about honoring his partner's exit, while the revelation that Briggs was pushed out rather than choosing to leave adds poignancy to those final years. For 30 years, two very different men created television magic by drawing audiences in the tens of millions and producing moments that prompted nationwide celebrations announced on football scoreboards. They gave Britain a rivalry that reflected the nation's own struggles between tradition and ambition, principle and profit, the old ways and the new. And when Mike Baldwin died in Ken Barlow's arms, believing it was still 1983 and Deirdre still loved him, it was the perfect ending to British soap's greatest love-hate relationship. Even if the man holding him felt it could have been better, even if the truth behind their partnership remains as complex and layered as the characters they played, and even if we'll never quite know where Johnny Briggs ended and Mike Baldwin began, where William Roach ended and Ken Barlow began, and what really passed between them in 3 decades of battles that looked and felt remarkably, unsettlingly real.